Hi, welcome to the Django REST Framework Bootcamp. I am Pawan Kumar and I have instructed over 50,000 plus students. In the short span of 2 hours, you will be able to cover most of the topics like building APIs, authentication methods, permission classes, routers, and view sets. This course is made to be unique. You don't have to waste tens of hours of time just to learn the simple topics. This course is a short and crisp course. And also, even before getting into the code, I am going to explain it in the whiteboard. Once we understand the logic, then we are going to code. And that's the reason why this course is unique. Python and Django is a must and should prerequisite for this course. Otherwise, you won't be able to catch the pace of this course. So make sure that you know the Python and Django before getting enrolled into this course. And finally, this is not just a tutorial, it's an experience. By the end of this course, you will be able to gain the confidence, you will be able to learn some hacks, some quick tricks, and you will be able to stand out of other developers. I'm waiting for you inside. Let's get started. Hi, in this session we are going to create a simple Django project and then we are going to create a simple API that acts as the get request, post request, and we are going to test this using the Postman. So let's get started by creating the Django project. Here I will right click on the desktop and then I will open the terminal, and here I will be going to create Django project using Django admin start project and let the project name be bookstore. So this will create the Django project on the desktop. Let's get into the project directory and then let's open this using the VS Code. Now this is the project and here we have to create the apps. Each project will hold multiple apps. Let's say in the bookstore, books is one app, payment maybe another app, and the cart can be another app, and chatting can be another app, and customer support can be another app. So in this single project, you can create multiple apps. So for now, let us create one app that holds the books. I mean the books data, the books API. So here, let's open the terminal and here we need to create the virtual environment, virtual env, and the environment name be env. Now this will create the virtual environment here. Now let's activate it. Before activating, let us see the contents of this environment. So in the env folder, there are scripts, and inside the scripts, there is an activate script. We need to activate this. So in the current directory, we will get into the env and then scripts and then activate script. So this will activate the virtual environment, and inside this virtual environment, we will install the REST framework, including Django. So pip install Django, and along with the Django, we also install Django REST framework. Let's wait till the installation gets completed. So once the installation is done, let's go ahead with the settings.py. So in order to get into the settings.py, it will be inside the project folder itself. Here you can find this, and in this entire course I will be using one keyboard shortcut, that is Control P. This helps me if I want to quickly navigate into some file. Let's say here in this case I want to get into the settings.py. So I'm just typing settings here. After pressing Control.P, I just have to type settings in the search bar which is popped up here. So here in the settings.py, if I click on enter, now I navigated to settings.py. Very easy, right? So here inside the settings.py in the installed apps, as we have installed the Django REST framework, let's mention that here REST framework. And as I said before, we can create multiple apps inside this project. till now we haven't created any apps, so let's create the books API. So here Python manage.py start app, and let the app name be books app or book app. So this will create one folder here, which is the app which we created now, and we have to include this app name in the settings.py. So here book app. So after including this, let's run the server again. Python manage.py run server. I'm assuming that you are able to understand whatever the commands I'm typing here. It's because Django is prerequisite of this course, so you will not be able to cope up if you don't know Django, but still you are listening to this course. So my advice is to get proficient with Django before continuing with this course. Otherwise, this looks like a very fast-paced course to you. So here I'm running the server here, but that is of no use. We did not create even a single API. So let's create the API. In order to create the API, first we have to declare the URLs. So in the book app, you cannot see the urls.py file. So let's create one urls.py where we mention all the URL patterns. And here declare the URL patterns. And here I will declare an URL which is list, which will list all the books from the database. And here I have to declare some function. So I will declare all the functions in the api.py. So I will create a new file api.py, and here I will create a function book list API, and it will accept the request, and we also have to specify what kinds of request it should accept. So here we use the decorator API view, and here we need to mention some kinds of request that it need to accept. In this case, I need to accept the get request. So I type it the get here, and here we need to return all the books. For now, I will hardcode few books in some Python variable, and later we can deal with the database. So for now, I will create books is equal to, in the list of books, let us hardcode some random book names. Let's say name is equal to some name, and author some author, and let's declare few more books. So as we hard coded the books, we just have to return some response with the books. Now if you observe here, there is a yellow underline here. That means these variables are not declared yet, so we need to import these from REST framework. So from REST framework dot decorators, we are importing the API view, and similarly we also import the response. So we have imported this. Now we also have to import the path from Django.urls import path. And whatever the function we have declared here, we have to specify this with the respective URL, so that whenever we make a request with this URL, this function will be executed. So in order to link this, first let us import this function into the urls.py. So from .api import booklist API, because we have declared this booklist API inside the api.py file. So after importing this, let us specify that here. Now this URL is declared inside the app. That means the scope of this URL is with respect to this app only. But whenever we are invoking, we invoke with the entire project. So we need to link this app level URL with the project level URL. So here inside the project, we specify the app level URLs. So we have to include the app level URLs into the project level. Then only this project can recognize that, hey, there are some URLs in this app. So here I will just include all the app level URLs. So here let the path be book, and then we have to include book app.urls, and we have to import this include from the Django.urls, which is a built-in function. Now this project has the book app URLs included. Now whenever you want to invoke this endpoint, you have to append that URL with this, because this is the base URL. Book slash list is the URL which we invoke. Now let us invoke and check. First let me open the Postman, and then here we type the URL. Currently, as this is in the development phase, we use the localhost, HTTP localhost, and the port number of Django is 8000. So I will mention 8000 here. And now, first we have to mention the project level URL, which is book slash. So book slash, and we have to append all the app level URLs, which is bookapp.urls with the base URL. So let's get into the bookapp.urls, this one, and here we have to append this with the base URL. Now if I send the request with the get request, here you can see all the books were returned in the JSON format. Now instead of hard coding all these books, let us get it from the database. So first we need to create the database. So get into the models.py and create the model book model models.model, and here we need to specify the attributes. For now I will specify only two attributes, which is name models.character field, max length 100, and similarly I will also mention the author. And now once the model was created, we have to make some migrations in order to make these changes in the database. So here, if you get into the settings.py, by default, we are using the SQLite 3 database, which is this file here. So whatever the model we create here, when we apply the migrations, those changes will take place in this database. So let us apply some migrations here. I am stopping the server and then I am applying some migrations by typing python manage.py make migrations, and then we also have to migrate python manage.py migrate. I hope you know the difference between make migrations and migrate, which you might have already studied in the Django. I'm not going into details because this is a REST framework course. Now let's get into the api.py, and here we have hard-coded some of the books, but instead let us insert some books into the database, and then let's use the get request using the Postman to see if we are getting all the books as JSON or not. So for this, first we need to enter some sample books into the database. So for that, let us insert through the shell. Of course, there are multiple methods to insert into the database, but for now, in order to demonstrate you with the simplest possible method, I am using the python manage.py shell. Let me type that python manage.py shell, which will enter into the shell, and then here first we need to import the model. So the model is in book app and models.py. So here we need to import this into our shell. So here from book app.models import book model, and here let us insert some data book model, and here let the name be let us use the same names which we have defined here. Name is the alchemist, so here the alchemist, and let the author be the same author. And then after mentioning the attributes values, now we have to save this into the database. Now this got inserted into the database. Similarly, we will insert one more book here. Book model name is equal to the 5 a.m. club, and let the author be Robin Sharma. Dot save. Now two books got inserted into the database. Now let us list these two books here itself to check if they are actually inserted into the database or not. Book dot name comma book dot author. For book in book model dot objects dot all. Now you can see we fetched it from the database. That means these are actually inserted into the database. So our test is done. Now we will send get request from the postman and there it will be displayed. So for that we have to modify this code. Instead of this hard coding, we will fetch from the database. We will fetch from the database and then we send response. So for fetching from the database, first we need to get all the books. Books equal to book model dot objects dot all, and here we need to import the book model. From dot models import book model. Now these books are the list of query sets. We have to convert each query set into the JSON, otherwise we will not be able to send the response back. Let us try with this. You will see, you will understand the error, then we will continue fixing that. Oops, I think we need to run the server. So I will exit the shell and then I will run the server. Python manage.py run server. Now the server is running. Let us send the post request. Now you can see that there is an error. Book model is not JSON serializable, because this is a list of query sets which we cannot send it as a response. So in this case, what we will do is we will convert each book element into the JSON. So books is equal to the same thing we will mention here, name which is a book name and author which is a book author, and here for book in all the books, and then we will send this books as a response. That's it, our get request is working. Now similarly we will do the post request. So what is a post request? Post request contains the body and we fetch the data from that body and then we add it into our database. Basically it is used to add something into our database. So here we will use the post request, and inside the post request we need to get the data from the client. So here we will declare a function book create API, and here first we need to get the data from the postman. I mean what is the name of the book and what is the name of the author. All these things we need to get it from the postman itself. How do we mention all those things in the postman? We mention that in the body, and here instead of get request we use the post request. So in the body we switch to the raw mode, and here we will mention the JSON as the format, and here we will mention the body as a JSON format. So here I will just mention some name as book A and the author as, I'm just mentioning some random book name. Similarly, some random author, the author is author A. Now if I send this, I need to fetch these details here in the code. Then all I can create the new book. So here in this case I'm getting the name and the author, and these two things, whatever the body we are getting into this code, that will be saved in request.data. So data equal to request.data, and then name is equal to data.name and author equal to data.author. Now once we get the enough data, we just have to put it into the database. So in this case, book model name is equal to name and the author is equal to author, and then we save it into the database, and then we return the response, return response. Some message we will put in the response, which is, and let the message be book created. Now let us send some post request, but before sending the post request we have to mention the URL that is corresponding to this function. So in the urls.py, let us import book create API, and then similarly we will create one more URL for this, and for now I'm removing the name here, which is not required for now. So here we created one more URL on top of the base URL which we mentioned in the project. So while accessing this URL, first we need to append it with the base URL. The base URL for the book app is book slash, and then we mention the actual URL of this application. So here in the postman we alter the URL, which is create. So we are mentioning the URL and we are mentioning the type of request as post, and then we are also mentioning the body. And then when we click on send, it's showing some attribute error. Dict object has no attribute name. I guess in the book create API, I guess this is the dictionary. So here instead of mentioning the dot name, we will use we will mention something like this, which is the key, the way we mention the key in dictionaries. Let us retest again. Yes, the book was created. Now let us list the books and see if we actually inserted the new book here. So here we are using the list and we are using the get request, and while using the get request the body is not required, it will not accept as well. So I'm removing the body here and I'm sending. You can see that our book was inserted into the database and then we fetched it in the JSON format. Now that's all about the get request, post request, and in the upcoming videos we are going to learn the put request, delete request, patch request, and we can still optimize these codes as well. Those all we will discuss in the upcoming sessions. Thank you. Hi, in this session we are going to implement the put request and delete request. Put request is used if we want to change some row in the database, and delete request is used to delete some row in the database. So here let's get started with the implementation, and here we will mention the API view decorator and we put request inside the API view decorator. That means we are saying that this particular endpoint is accepting the put request. Now let's declare the book update API, and then here first we need to get the data, which we get it from data equal to request.data, and then we need to update the changes. So here you may get the question, to which row in the database you need to update. So obviously the postman have to specify the row. So how the postman is going to specify the row? It is by using the row ID. So here we will modify the URL for the put request. So instead of list, here we will put something like update, and then we also have to mention the ID of the book which we want to update. So here let's say the ID is 2. So here before mentioning the ID, let us see the IDs using the get request. So here I'm just rolling back here inside the list itself. When we are getting the response here, let's also get the ID along with this data. So here inside the book list API, we also mention the ID as book.id. So here if I send the get request, here you can see that each book is associated with some ID. So if I want to update this book, let's say the 5 a.m. club, I need to pass this ID in the URL. So let us define the URL here. Book update, and then here we need to specify the ID. Let's say the ID is 2. Now we need to get this number into the urls.py. So here I'm going to create one more URL which is update, and here we also have to specify which ID. So here as the ID is variable and as well as it is an integer, so here I'm mentioning the ID as int, which is a variable in this case. That means the postman, I mean the client, can send any ID here, and that we will parse in the urls.py. And here we will mention the function which is book update API. So here every time we are importing each function from the .api. So instead of importing each function here, we will import all the functions by mentioning the asterisk symbol. So here in the book update API, we are getting the data, but we also have to get the ID, I mean for which ID we need to update. So for that we are passing the ID here, and we have to capture whatever the ID is passed through the URL, which is here inside the function. So here we got the ID, we got the data, and we just have to update the data for this particular ID. So what we will do is first we need to get the book with that ID. So the book is equal to book model dot objects dot get id is equal to id. Now we need to update the data. Book dot name is equal to data name and book dot author equal to data author. Once we update this query set, we need to update the changes in database as well. So we do book dot save. This will actually save in the database rather than saving in the Python variable. So here, once after it is updated, we'll just return the response with some message, return response, and here let the message be book updated. So once this is done, let us test this API. So here in the URL, let us switch this to the put request, and in the URL we are passing the ID. That means this book, this particular book. I want to change the name to the 6 a.m. club. Currently it is the 5 a.m. club. I want to change this to 6 a.m. club. So in this case, I am just mentioning the body. Here I need to mention the name, and here I need to type the updated book name 6 a.m. club. I also have to mention the author. I don't want to change the author, so I'm just copy pasting this thing here. Done. Now let us update this. Now you can see the message, the book is updated. Now let us switch to get request and let's change the URL to book and then list. Now you can see that the book is updated in the database here. So this is all about the put request. There are too many requests actually. I mean, too many types of requests. Let's say the patch request, the options request, etc., etc. But for now, we will study the main important types of requests. Now let's get back and implement the delete API view, the rate of API view declarator, and this we will mention the delete, and here we will declare a function book delete API, and here we pass the request. And for deleting the book also, we also have to specify which book we need to delete. That means which ID we need to delete. So for mentioning that also, we will use the variable URL. Here instead of update, we will declare it as delete, and then we map it with book delete API. Now let's get into the book delete API. As we are getting the ID from the URL itself, we will get the ID into the function itself, and here we need to get the book, and then we have to delete. Book equal to book model dot objects dot get id equal to id, and then looks like the code got auto completed, but I will type it again for you. It's because of my GitHub Copilot. Looks like it's going to type the same which I'm going to type. That's fine. That's fine. Anyways, you are able to understand, I guess. So book model dot objects dot get. First, we will get the book with the particular ID, and then we delete the book. So book dot delete. This will delete that book from the database. So for saving into the database, we use a dot save. Similarly, we use the dot delete here once we get the book from the ID. And then we return some response with some message equal to book deleted. Now I will delete some book here instead of, first I will list all the books here. Now we listed all the books here. Now I want to delete this third book, ID equal to 3. So here book delete, and we also have to specify which book we want to delete. I want to delete with the ID 3. So I specified the ID 3 here, and instead of get request, I'll put the delete request, and then we don't have to specify any body because we are not sending anything. If we send the ID, that's enough. That itself will represent everything. So I will send the request. The book got deleted. Yeah, now let us list all the books to check if the book actually got deleted or not. So here let it be the get request. Yep, the third book got deleted. So that's it about the put and delete requests. In the upcoming session, we are going to deal with the serializers. Hi, in this session we are going to deal with the serializers. So before getting into what is serializer, what are the advantages of it, how we use it, let us create some good example in order to demonstrate what exactly serializer is. So in order to create a good example, I will just alter the database. I will just add some extra field here, which is a price equal to models.integer field. Now I'll just make the migrations python manage.py, make migrations. I think it is asking me to provide some default value here. So I will select the option 1 and let the default value be 0. So the default value of the price will be 0 if I don't mention anything. So I will just migrate this. Now if I get into the API.py, I just have to add the price here, data price, and while saving I need to pass the price as well. Now if you observe this function, what if the client sends the invalid price? Let's say the client is sending -20 as the price, which is invalid because prices will be positive always. In this case, you will put a simple if condition. If price is less than 0, that means you have to return some response with an error message. Let the message be invalid price or prices cannot be negative. Any message is fine. So if the client sends some negative price, in this case, it will just return the response with some error message. Now, let us consider this scenario. Here you have only one function that creates the book. But if you get into the enterprise level applications where you will be having thousands of functions, in this case, it is very uneasy to mention the condition inside every API function. Usually when making the softwares, we should follow the dry theorem. Dry mean DRY, don't repeat yourself. Whenever we are creating a new function, we should not repeat this step everywhere in order to validate the price. So in order to do this, we need something that validates before entering into the database. That is nothing but serializer. So let's practically implement this. You will understand more when we are practically implementing. So here I need to import the serializers from the REST framework. So from REST framework, we need to import serializers, and we need to create a serializer that will validate before putting it into the database. So here I will create a class with book model serializer, and here we need to mention few things here inside the meta class. The two things are, one is which model we are referring to, and we also have to mention what all fields we need to consider. I think it looks little confusing in the beginning, but don't worry at all. I will explain this again when we are actually dealing with the function here. So here we are using the validation. I will remove the validation here and I will put inside this model serializer. So here I will create a function, and that function is name is validate. Inside the validate, we need to pass two things. One is self, one is data. The self is referring to this model serializer, I mean book model serializer. And here we need to validate this thing. The same thing I am pasting here. If the price is less than 0, return response. But here we are not going to return the response. We are going to return the error instead, because this is not the API function. This is just a serializer. We return the error here, and here we will send the error response. So here I am removing the response here. So if the price is less than 0, it should raise this error, some validation error. So how do we get this price? We get price from the entire data. If price is less than 0, it will return some validation error, or otherwise it will return the data itself. So let's get back here. In order to understand this, first let us simplify this code. We are getting the name, we are getting the author, we are getting the price, all right from the data. But here, as we have only 3 attributes, we are able to do this step. What if you have hundreds of attributes? You cannot mention each and every something like x equal to data of something x. So serializer simplifies this part also. We don't have to explicitly fetch name, author, price, and then putting into the database. Instead, we pass this entire data into the serializer, and that will handle everything behind the scenes. So here the saving also will take place in serializer itself. So I am removing the save method here because serializer itself is to validate the data and save also. So in that case, we don't have to explicitly save here. We use the serializer to save. So here we get the data, we pass to the serializer, we validate using the serializer, and we save using the serializer. So everything is being done by serializer itself. So in this case, first we need to pass the data into the serializer. So I'll declare serializer here. Serializer equal to book model serializer here. This is nothing but whatever the class we declared here. And when we are doing data equal to data, we also have to mention what all fields it need to include. Let's say if you get into the models.py, we have three fields here, name, author, price. I want to tell to the serializer that, hey, serializer, include all these fields. That itself is this thing here. I am just saying to the serializer that to include all the fields, whether it is the get request, post request, or any other request. I'm just saying to the serializer that consider all the fields either while putting the data or while getting the data. So here I mention fields is equal to all, and I also have to mention which model it should refer to. So for that I just mention model equal to book model. So here I mention two things. One is model equal to book model, which it has to refer to, and also I have to mention all the fields. Here in this case I mention all, but you can also mention if you want to consider only a specific fields. So here in the serializer we mention the model, we mention what all fields required in that model, and also we mention the validate function which validates before putting into the database. Now we created a serializer which equals to book model serializer, and we passed the data, and this data will be validated here. As we pass the data, it will validate. If yes, it will return the data. If not, it will return the error. So here, if serializer is valid, serializer.save. If it is valid, then only save. Otherwise, don't save. If it is saved, that means it is success. That means the book is created. So I'm just moving this response here, and else we need to return all the errors from the serializer. So this is how serializer is helping. Here you can see there are two use cases with the serializer. We pass the entire data into the serializer, and serializer is handling what all attributes is to be considered. Here I mentioned also all the attributes will be considered and it will be saved into the database. If there are any errors, it will return the errors. So serializer is doing A to Z here. We are just mentioning some if else loop here. I mean if else condition here. Now let us check this with our postman. So here I want to create book B, author B, and let us mention some incorrect price which is -20. Let us send the request. Oops, I think the server is not turned on. Python manage.py run server. Yep. Now let's send the request. Yeah, we got the error from the right from the serializer, which is very good thing. Here you don't have to validate everything. Just send it to the serializer and serializer will handle everything, including validation, including fields, including which model, everything serializer will validate. And all your functions are simplified. Even if you create one more function, you will just refer the serializer and that will take care of all the things. You don't have to explicitly mention all the conditions inside the function itself, which simply beautifies and cleanify your code. That's it. Now let me mention some price which is 20 rupees or $20, whatever your currency might be. Now I am sending the post request here. Yes, book got created. Now let us see if book got really created or not. I'm moving back to my get request with the list as URL. Now I'm sending. Now you can see the book B got added here. Now here if you see in the get request, we are fetching ID, name, author from the query set. But we can use serializer here in order to automate this. We just don't have to mention each and every attribute here and then returning from the response. Here we can use serializer because serializer is helping us to convert it into JSON as well. because we mentioned fields is equal to all. So let's do this here. Convert to JSON with using serializer. Serializer is equal to, as we are using books here, which is more than one book, we have to mention many equal to true. Then only we can return some list of books rather than a single book. Now, instead of sending books as a response, we send serializer.data, because serializer helps us to convert it into JSON, and serializer.data will just return the JSON representation of this query set. So serializer is helping us to convert some row or a list of rows into JSON, and as well as for the validation. Now let us see by sending the GET request. Now you can see all the fields are included here just because we mentioned fields equal to all. So that's all about the serializer, and let us use the serializer for other put request and delete requests also. So here, instead of using this thing, we directly pass into the serializer, and serializer will take care of this put request. So here first we need to bring one book which we want to update, and that book will be book model.objects.get id equal to id. We are sending the id through the URL, and we are getting the book that has id equal to whatever the id we send here. So once we get the book, we need to update this book with the data we got. So earlier what we have done, we are fetching each data from request.data. Let's say name is equal to data.name. We are fetching like this individually. But here, as we have the serializer, we can directly pass this data into the serializer, and that itself will handle fetching each and every attribute and patching each and every attribute in the put request. So we don't have to explicitly get the attributes from the data. So here, once we get the book, we need to set this as an instance. We need to mention the instance to the serializer. Instance is nothing but we are saying to the serializer that, hey serializer, update this book. How we mention a particular book here? We have to mention it inside the instance. Instance equal to book, which we got it from here, where we equated id equal to id. And then we also have to pass with which data we have to update this particular instance. So we also have to mention data is equal to data. And during put request, we need to validate as well. So if serializer dot is valid, serializer dot save book updated. If not, we are just going to return book not updated or any other error message. Or we also can mention serializer dot errors, where serializer automatically provides some errors. So that's all about the put request. Now let's get into the delete request. I guess for delete request, the serializer is not required because there is no JSON required here. We just have to get the ID. We just have to delete. That's it. So in this case, the serializer is not required unless you are using some nested classes or nested models. But this is as simple as that. So let us try to test the put request here. I will select the put here, and I will just change the URL here. I want to update the book with the ID too. That means this book. I just want to rename the book name as the 5 AM club here. So insert the body. I'll just copy paste this here. I just want to update the name. So without disturbing other fields, I will just update the name, the 5 AM club. As you can see here, the book got updated here. Now let me update with the price as -3, which is an invalid price. So I will click on send here. Here you can see the prices cannot be negative. Here I have only one validation for multiple functions, which is a very great thing because I don't have to explicitly mention the conditions here and here. I'm just using the serializer, and that is taking care of validating converting into JSON, etc. Now let us use the get request and let's see if the book is actually updated or not. Here I use the list. As you can see here, this got renamed to 5 a.m. club. But the price is not changed because we use the validator here. The price remains same. So this is the beauty of the serializers, and I will catch you in the upcoming sessions. Thank you. Hi, in this session we are going to deal with the authentication. The reason I opened this whiteboard is because first we will visualize the authentication mechanism on this whiteboard and then we will apply this logic into our code. So whenever you visit any social media platforms, there you will see two account access options. One is the sign up and one is the login. So let me type those two options here. One is sign up, and if you already have an account, then you will click on login. So let me draw some divider between these two. And now during sign up, we will request three major things from the client. One is the username, one is the password, and one is we will ask them to re-enter the password. I'll just name this as repassword. Now, when we get this info from the client, in the backend, first we need to check if the password is equal to re-enter password. If not, we will send back the error message, which is saying that the both of these passwords were not matching. For simplicity, I just want to remove the re-enter password for now. First, let us deal with the actual authentication mechanism. Then we will implement these additional features later, such as handling the duplicate usernames and such as verifying the password again. All these things we can implement it later. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just removing all the additional options. Now, when we get this username and password, what we try to do, we will store this into our database, because whenever he's trying to log in, we will match those details with these details and then we will authenticate the user. So let me draw some database representation here. I will just draw some rectangle here. I will take some rectangle here, and now let's assume this as a database table, which is the user table. Let me type the name of the table as well. Yeah, this is the user table. Now let me draw some divider inside the table as well to represent the columns. I'm just typing here the two main columns, which is the username and another one is the password. There will be several fields actually, but I'm just showing you the simplest table possible. Now this will be the password. So whenever the client gives us the username and password and request us to create the account using these details, now this username and password will get into this table. Let me create some example username. Let the username be my name, which is Pawan, and let the password be some password something like 1234. Now I want to create an user using these details. So the username, I will just put it here because I want to create the account. That means the account is getting stored in the database. This username and password which you are seeing above are just the titles of the columns. I will just draw some divider here also so that you won't get confused. Yeah, these are the headings of the columns of the table. Now whenever I am creating the user, the username is getting stored in the username column. But if I want to store the password in the password column, let's say 1234. Now this is storing as a plain text. Is this the right way to do? Because let us say these are the details of a bank account. Now the database administrator of that bank account will get to know our passwords, which is vulnerable, which is not acceptable as well, because the website is insecure, which causes trouble for the users later. So what we will do is, instead of directly storing the password as a plain text, first we run this password through some algorithm. It's an encryption algorithm basically. So I'll just draw an arrow mark here saying that I'm running this password through some encryption algorithm. Let us say SHA-256. Of course, there are lots of encryption algorithms, but I'm just choosing one for simplicity for your understanding. Now, when we pass this password through the encryption algorithm, it will generate the encrypted password. Let's say this 1234 will be generated something like this, some random string, and we store this string as a password into our database, something like this. So instead of directly storing the password, we run it through the SHA-256 algorithm, or it can be any other algorithm, any other encryption algorithm, and then we get the encrypted password which we store it into the database. So even though if the database administrator tries to get this password, he will get the encrypted password but not the actual password, which is a safe thing, because once the password is encrypted, it cannot be reverse engineered, because this is a one-way algorithm. It only encrypts the password. So now let us get into the login thing. So in the login also, the client will provide the username and password. And during login, we cross-check these details with the table. I mean, we iterate through all the rows of this table and we see if something is matching with the username and password that client entered. Let us say the client entered the username something like with my name, which is Pawan, and the password will be something like 1234. Now I want to authenticate using these details where the username is Pawan and the password is 1234. Now the username will be checked something like this. If the username is matched with some name in the table, and password we cannot match it directly because this is the encrypted password and this is the password in the plain text. So now how do I verify this? What will I do is I will run this password through the encryption algorithm. The same step will be repeated here. And instead of checking this 1234 directly with the encrypted password, I will run it through the same encryption algorithm and then I get the encrypted password. This I will verify with the password column here. So this is how the sign up works and this is how the login works. In both of these cases, we use the encryption algorithm. In case of sign up, we use the encryption algorithm to save the encrypted password in the database. And here in during the login, we run the user entered password through the encryption algorithm and then we get the encrypted password, and this encrypted password we cross check it existing rows of the database. So this is how the sign up and login works. So now let us implement this in our code. Earlier I created book app to manage all the books like creating, deleting, updating the books. But now I want to manage the users as well. So I want to create one more application in the same project. So what will I do is I will just open the terminal and I will just type python manage.py start app, and I want to create an app something like user app where I will use to manage the users. So once I enter this, a new folder will be created here. As you can see here, a new app is created, but in this the urls.py is missing. So what I will do is I will create a new file, urls.py, and here the same thing I will copy paste from the book app, and here the URL patterns will be different. So I will just delete all these URL patterns, and here also I need to create one API file where I will mention all my functions, api.py. Now I will create some URLs here. The first URL I will create is to create the user, and then I will create some function user create API. Now I have to declare this user create API in the API file. So here I will create a function user create API where it will accept the request. So in the user create API we need two things. One is the username and one is the password. These two things we need from the client so that we can use these details to create the account. So username equal to request.data username. Similarly password is equal to request.data password. Once I get these details, I have to create the account using these details. So for managing the books, we created a book table in the book app. Similarly, we can create the user table here, class user, and then models.model. And here we will create some attributes like username is equal to something and password equal to something. Now this table will be created when we apply the migrations, and then we can store the username and passwords here. But we mentioned one more thing there. When we are storing the passwords in the database, we cannot store it as a plain text. But whenever you create the user something like this, here you mention models dot character field, but this is absolutely wrong because we are mentioning this as a character field That means whatever the password we are storing here will be stored as a plain text. But I want my website to be secure. I want my application to be secure. So what I will do is, instead of creating the user, I will just remove this and I will use the model which was already created by Django. So here I don't have to declare any models because there is one built-in model which was built by Django, which I will use in the API.py without creating any models. So here from django.contrib.auth.models import user. So here we are using the built-in user model. So here we are not going to create any model here. We are using the built-in model created by Django itself. The advantage of this built-in model is it handles the encryption behind the scenes. Just pass the password to this model and it will encrypt behind the scenes. You don't have to write a custom logic to this. So here once we get the username and once you get the password, we need to create the user. But if you create the user something like this, username is equal to username, password is equal to password dot save, it will save as a plain text. So using this kind of syntax is not recommended. Using this kind of approach is not recommended. So what we will do is we will use some built-in function of this user, that is create user function. User.objects.create user, username is equal to username, password equal to password. Now this will encrypts the password and then store it into the database rather than directly storing the password into the database. So once we create the user, we need to return the response with some message user created. Now let me import some of these functions from REST framework. Import from REST framework dot response, import response, and we also have to import the API view where we will use that as a decorator, and the method is post because we are getting the username and password from the body. And let us test this using our postman. But before testing this, we have declared the URLs here, right? But we need to include these URLs in the project level URLs. This is the project level URLs. We need to tell this URLs.py that, hey, URLs.py, there are some URLs in the user app as well. So let us try to do that. Path user include user app.urls. Now this base URLs has all the user app.urls. If you want to invoke this endpoint, you will first enter the base URL and then you will append that with the actual URL of this application. So let us do that. Let me open the Postman and I will create the account. I will create a new tab. Here I need to set the request to post and then I need to enter the URL. User base URL is user and then our URL is create, and in the body we need to send the username and the password in the JSON format. So username is equal to, I'll just type my name and the password is 1234. Now when I send this, it is showing that connection refused. I think I need to run the server here, python -.py run server. Now if I send the request, it is showing me that user created. Now let us try to log in. Before logging in, let us try to see the database. Like I want to see how my password is getting stored. So if you get into the VS Code here, you will see some of the extensions, something like SQLite 3 editor. I recommend you to download this because this helps you to see the database. I have installed this so I am able to see. If I get into my project directory and then if I click on SQLite 3, I am able to see the database here using that plugin. So I recommend you to download that and then you will be able to see the database, something like this. And if you can see here, even though my password is 1234, it is getting stored as some other string which is an encrypted password. That means even though I am the developer of this website, I am unable to see my own password in this database. That's the beauty of the encryption. Username is getting stored as a plain text as expected, but the password is encrypted, which is a really good thing. I want to log in using my credentials, so I will create one more endpoint for login. Path login, user login API, and I will create this function in the API.py. Here I will create something like API view post and then create what's the function name I declared, user login API. Now request, here also I will get the username is equal to request.data username and password is equal to request.data password. Now I want to authenticate using both of these. If I try to fetch both of these in the database, something like this, let's say user.objects.get username is equal to username, password is equal to password. Here the drawback is I am searching the username is equal to username and password is equal to password. My password is 1234, which is not equal to this encrypted password. So this is not going to work. We need to encrypt the password and then we need to check it with the database. We cannot check 1234 with this encrypted password. So what we will do is, instead of using the user.objects.get, we will import one more important function that encrypts the user password and then checks it with the database. So that is the authenticate function. From django.contrib.auth, we are going to import some of the important built-in functions that helps us to do these kinds of job very easily. So here, instead of using the user.objects.get, we use the authenticate function. This authenticate function, what it does is it will encrypt the password and then it will check it with the database. So it's a two-step process. First, it will encrypt the password and then it will check with the database. Now, if user is not none, that means if the user with this data exists, that means we can log in that user. So here we are logging in that user. If not, that means else. We just send them some message like invalid credentials. Here also we can send some message, something like return response. We can send some message like user logged in. Now you may get some doubt. What does this login mean? You need to understand what is this login doing behind the scenes. So before discussing about this line, we will try to see the major types of authentications. The first type of authentication is session authentication, and another one is token authentication. There's one more authentication which is an extension to this token authentication, that is nothing but JWT. Let us study about these two in the upcoming sessions, but for now I want to concentrate only on the session authentication. During session authentication, let us say you opened a Facebook account, you logged in and you closed the browser. When you reopen again, you don't have to enter the username and password again because your browser is auto-authenticating. But how this is happening? Let us say you have the Django server and the client provided username and password for authentication. I'm just typing here username and password. Now when you provide the username and password to the Django server for authentication purpose, what this does is it will validate this username and password. After validation, it will provide some key, which is a session key. I'll just mention here, it will provide the session key. And this will be stored in cookies of the browser. So whenever you revisit the website, even after closing the browser, as this session key is in our cookies, this session key will be sent to the Django server again, and there it will look up the user details from this session key. It looks confusing in the beginning, but I will try to explain once again. For our understanding, I will just create one more table here that has the session key and the user details. I'll just draw some divider here. Now I'll just mention something like this, session key, and then user details. So whenever you log in using the username and password, the Django will create the session key. Let me type something like this, some session key. And this session key it will send back to the client and the client will store it in the cookies. So whenever you revisit the website, the Django will check for the cookies, and if there is any cookie that has the session key, then this session key is mapped with user details. So in this way, the browser is able to authenticate with the session key without any username and password. If you get into the Postman, here you can see the cookie is created by Django, which is the session ID, As long as I have this session ID in the cookies, the Django will auto authenticate me without using any username and password. If I remove this session ID from the cookies, then I have to authenticate again in order to get this session ID, and then I can auto login into my website. So in order to understand this, let me create one more function here. So in order to demonstrate this example, I want to create some protected view. So in the API view of get, I'll just create a function protected view. So only authenticated users will be able to access this view. So here I will pass the request. If request.user.is authenticated, then I will show that some message something like I am already authenticated. Now in order to access this view, I will create a URL that is pointing to this view path protected view. Now I will send the postman request user/protected, and I'm not sending any username and password here because there is already a session ID cookie. Now let me see the message. It is showing me that please login. Now I will log in using my credentials, login, and then inside the body I need to type something like my credentials, username Pavan, and the password is 1234, and the content type is JSON. Now I will send the request. Method get is not allowed. I think I need to put the post request because there is a body here. Yes, I am logged in. That means inside the cookies, I can see my session ID, the new session ID. Now I will delete the username and password, and I will try to access the protected view, protected, and I am using the get request here. So I will send the request. It is saying that I'm already authenticated. I'm not sending any username and password here. Without even sending the username and password, the server is saying me that I'm already authenticated. How this is happening? It's because in the cookies, the session ID is stored. This session ID is generated whenever I log in. Whenever I log in, once the session ID is generated, and if that session ID is stored in my cookie, the Django will fetch this cookie and then matches this session ID with its database. Then after validation, the is authenticated becomes true. Once it is true, it is saying that I'm already authenticated. Once it is true, it is returning a response saying that I'm already authenticated. If the session ID is missing in the cookies, then it will return this response. Now, along with the message, I can also send the user details because the session ID is matched with the user details as well. So username will be request.user.username. Now I will send the request again. It is getting the details as well because the session ID has some mapping with the user details inside the database behind the scenes. So this is all about authentication. In the next session, we are going to deal with the different types of authentication. There are lots of types actually, but majorly there will be two. One is session authentication, one is token authentication, and one more is just an extension to the token authentication, which is a JWT. We will discuss all this in the upcoming session. Thank you. Hi, in this session we are going to deal with the token authentication. So before diving into the token authentication, let us try to differentiate between the session authentication and the token authentication. Let us take an example. Here I will take some sample URL, which is a banking app URL. Let's say the URL is localhost, and let's say this URL will be used to send money from one account to another account. Let's say we are sending to a person with the ID 3 and let the amount be 1000. I will do the same with the token authentication also. Now let us try to see the difference. I'll just type the request contents. So here, first of all, the request URL will be the URL which we are requesting, and then the type will be get or post or whatever it may be, and we are also sending the session key from the cookies. So the cookie content will be also sent, and this cookie will be containing the session key, because whenever we are authenticating using the session authentication, the moment we send the username and password, after validation we are getting the session key and storing it in the cookies. Now whenever I click on this link, what happens is it will send the request to the server with the type and cookie. The cookie will be set automatically. We don't have to explicitly set it. and this cookie contains the session key. So this request will be considered as authenticated request because it's containing the session key. So even though the URL is protected, it is behaving as if the user is authenticated because the key is already stored in the cookie when the user logged in previously, and this is nothing but the cross-site forgery. So in order to avoid this issue, we use the token authentication. In the token authentication, we send the token using the headers. That means the programmer have to explicitly mention the token in the headers, so that even though if I click on this link, it will be considered as unauthenticated. It's because even though the server is accessing all the cookies, we are not storing the token in the cookie. Rather, we are storing the token in the header, which the programmer have to mention it explicitly, and then the request should be considered as authorized request. But here in the session authentication, everything is automatic. If the session key is in the cookie, that means the URL is considered as authorized because we are not explicitly mentioning in the headers, but in this case we have to explicitly mention in the headers. So here the cross-site forgery will not take place, which is a security advantage. So here likewise I'll just copy paste here, and instead of cookie we set the headers, and these headers will not be sent automatically unless a programmer mentions the keys here. Let's say the authorization will be token space and some token. So as the authorization headers were mentioning explicitly, the cross-site forgery attack will not be possible here. But here it is possible as everything is automated. A simple URL is enough. The request will itself will pull the cookie and will send to the server, and this will act like an authorized request. But in this case, as we are mentioning this explicitly, we don't have to worry with the cross-site forgery attack. So that's about the token authentication, and let us try to implement this token authentication. First and foremost, we have to edit the settings. So let me get into the VS Code and edit the settings.py. Here we need to add one more app that contains the model having the token management. So here in this case, REST framework dot token. This REST framework dot token will contain a model that manages the tokens. Now let me create one more setting here. By default, REST framework is using the session authentication, but we need to we need to change the default authentication class to the token authentication. So REST framework settings, let us try to declare the settings here, default authentication classes. Here we are mentioning the token authentication. That means by default, here on it will use the token authentication. Now let us get into the API.py in the users app. And here earlier we discussed that the login request user is setting the cookie in the client. But now we are not using the cookies anymore. We are using the token authentication. That means things are not automated. The programmer has to explicitly write a code to get the token and send it to the client. So token comma created is equal to token dot objects dot get or create. That means if there is a token, it will get. If there is no token, it will create and then it will get. So here the token is undeclared because we have to import the token model. As I said before, in the settings.py, I have mentioned an app here, that REST framework.token. That means this is handling the token model. So we can import the token model from this REST framework.token app. So here I'm going to import from REST framework.token.models, import token. And this token model, this built-in token model will manage everything. Now, as I told, as everything is not automated, it's our duty to send the token to the client. So here in the response, along with the message, I would like to send the token, which is token.key. Now let us try to test this with the Postman. So in the Postman, I will just send the request to the login URL using the post request. And then when I send my credentials, I think I need to run the server here. Python manage.py run server. I think in the settings.py, it's not token, it's the auth token. Yep. Now let us try to test this with the Postman. I'm sending the post request to this URL. It is saying me that the user logged in, and as I explicitly mentioned here to send the token key back to the client, it is sending me the token key. Now I can use this key to automatically authenticate from the next even without the username and password. So now let us try to invoke the protected view user/protected. And here I am using the get request, and I'm deleting the body because I don't need it anymore. The token key is enough to prove myself as authenticated. So I'm just setting the headers. Here I need to mention the authorization header, and here I need to mention something like token and then space and the token which we copied earlier. I mean this one. Now if I send the request, it is saying that I'm already authenticated, and it is also saying that my username is Pawan. So this is all about the token authentication. So the advantage of token authentication is this is less automated. That means few things are in our control, not like the cookies. So as we are mentioning the token explicitly both the server side and the client side, there is no chance of cross-site forgery but in the session authentication, as we are using the cookies are being sent automatically to the server, and here the possibility of cross-site forgery is more. So the security issue is solved, but the performance issue is not solved yet. And JWT can solve the performance issue as well as the security issue, which we will discuss in the upcoming video. Thank you. Hi. In this session, we are going to study about the JWT, the JSON Web Token. So before getting started, first let us try to understand the differences between the session authentication, the token authentication, and then the JWT. So let me type the titles here. One is session authentication and one is token authentication and JWT. Let me draw the dividers here between them. Now in the session authentication, the key is automatically getting stored in the cookies. So if you see the line here, the login request comma user, this is helping us to save the generated session key in the client side, especially in the cookies. So whenever the person revisits the website, the server will be having direct access to the cookies of this particular website. Then the server pulls the cookies and then it finds the session key in the cookies and then it validates. So here everything is automated. Storing in the cookies is automated and then fetching from the cookies is automated. So in the session based authentication, we need login request comma user, which is automatically saving it into the cookies. In the token based authentication, this line is not required because we are not going to store in the cookies. Wherever the client wants to store, it's up to the front end programmer. But there is some manual stuff here. We are creating the token and then we are sending it to the client explicitly. There is no such kind of automation here. In the case of session based authentication, there is an automation. We are just putting login request comma user and saving it into the cookies, getting it from the cookies. Is everything is being handled by the server itself because things are automated there. Here we are manually generating the token and then we are sending it to the front end using the response. So in the token based authentication, this line is not required. You can remove that. Now let us try to implement the JWT. Before implementing the JWT, let me draw the differences here. In the session authentication, we are going to store it in the cookies, which is an automatic thing. And in the token authentication, it's up to the front end programmer whether he wants to store it into the cookies, he wants to store it into the local storage, or if he wants to store into the some kind of a Python variable or a JavaScript variable. It's up to him. But while sending it to the server, he have to place it into the headers, which we have already done before. In case of JWT also, we are going to put it in headers itself. But what's the major difference? What's the difference between the token authentication and JWT? In both the cases, we are putting it into the headers itself. So here the major difference is in the session authentication, the session key is being mapped with the user in the database. So the mapping is being stored in the database. There is some database that is maintaining the map between the session key and the user details. So here the mapping is being taken place using the database. It's the same case with the token. The token versus user details is being stored in the database. But in case of JWT, there won't be any database. The JWT don't depend on database. So what's the advantage of no database here? If there is a database, let's say there are 1 crore users and I have to validate a token, then in this case, I have to look over all the 1 crore rows, which is a time consuming thing. But when there is no database, as there is no lookup, the validation is instant. And that's the beauty of no database. But how the JWT is able to map a particular token with the user? When there is a database, the mapping is very easy. Like we can look into the rows and then we can map the user details with a particular token. So that when we are validating, we pass the token, it will look up all the 1 crore rows and then it will get the user details from the mapped key value pairs. But in case of JWT, it's not the same. There is no database, but how the mapping is being taken place. The logic is very interesting here. Instead of storing the key value pairs in the table, rather the JWT uses the encryption and decryption algorithm. Whenever it is generating the token, it will generate the token based on the user details. It will encrypt the user details and then it will generate the token. So when we want to revalidate the token, we don't have to look up all the rows because there won't be any database. We just have to decrypt the token. When we decrypt the token, we get all the user details back. So as there is no database, the JWT performs really fast compared to the session authentication and the token authentication. That's the power of JWT. Now, in case of session authentication and token authentication, the major difference is in token authentication, the website is more secure because there won't be any CSRF attack, the cross-site forgery. It's because when we store it into the cookies, as things are automated, a single URL is enough to send the token to the server. But in token authentication, we are mentioning the authentication details explicitly in the headers. Of course, we can make the session authentication more secure by adding the CSRF tokens, but the token authentication is more simpler than session authentication. But in case of JWT, it's all about the performance. Compared to session authentication and token authentication, the JWT performs really well. So now let us try to implement the JWT. Before getting into the JWT, as JWT doesn't come from the REST framework, the token authentication and session authentication were built in Django. But the JWT, which we have to install it separately. Like let's try to search it in the Google. Django REST Framework JWT, and if you get into the read.docs.io, here you can see something like installation. Here you can see we need to install it using the pip install Django REST Framework simple JWT. Let me type that here. So once the installation is completed, get into I think we need to configure the default authentication classes. Earlier we configured it with the token authentication here. If you see in the settings.py, we have configured the token authentication, but rather now we will replace that with the JWT. Now, so earlier we have created the login URL, which will invoke the user login API. And here we are getting the username, password, and then we are authenticating the details. But in case of JWT, the JWT itself providing a view. That means we don't have to implement this function. This function is being given by JWT itself. So let us try to import that. We don't need this anymore. I'm just deleting this because JWT is providing this kind of function. So in the urls.py also I don't need this user login API, and I will get into the project level URLs, and here I will just mention the imports, the token opt and pair view and token refresh view. I'm importing these two from the REST framework simple JWT, which we have just installed now. Now in the path I just have to map these views with some URL API token, and we have to map it with the view token opt and pair view as a view. Now let us test this URL using the Postman. So python manage.py run server, and let me open the Postman. Here I will generate the token using this URL which we just created now. Here we need to invoke this endpoint, so I will be copying this, and the URL is http localhost 8000 / API token, and here we need to send the username and the password. Username and password. And here I will be using the post request. I will send the request. Now I got the refresh and the access key. Let us discuss about the refresh key later. For now, let us concentrate on access key. I will be copying this refresh key and the access key in the notepad just for my reference. Now let us try to invoke the protected view localhost 8000 and here user protected. Now here I will be using the get request and I don't have to pass the username and password, rather I will pass the access key in the headers. So here I will just mention the authorization and here I need to mention the bearer token and I will be pasting the token here. Let me copy the access token here and I will paste that here. Now let me send the request to the protected view. It is saying that I'm already authenticated and it's also getting my username. So the JWT is working. If I remove the authorization, it is saying me to please log in. Now let us see what is this refresh token. This access token will be having some expiry date or time. Once it expires, we use the refresh token to generate the new access token. So let us implement this. I just have to copy the refresh token along with the key value pair. Now in the body, I just have to mention the refresh in the JSON format. Now I need to create an URL to pass the refresh token. So here along with the API token, I will be declaring one more URL which is refresh token. And here instead of token obtain pair view, we will just map it with the token refresh view. Now let me generate the new access token using the refresh token. Here the URL is API token and then refresh. Now this will generate me the new access key. I think the type of request is post because we are sending the body. I will send the request. Now I got the new access key. If my old access key got expired, I can use this refresh token to generate the new access key. So that's all about the JWT. I will catch you in the upcoming video. Thank you. Hi. In this session, we are going to deal with the permission classes. So here, if you look into this code, we have written something like if user is authenticated, then send some message. If the user is not authenticated, notify him to log in again. Now, this looks a little messy, right? Like for every view, I need to put if else statement if there is some protected view. So I just want to avoid this. I want to make this simple. So in order to avoid this if else statements for authentication, I use the permission classes. So let me put the permission classes decorator here. Permission classes, and here I put something like is authenticated. The moment I put this decorator is handling this if else condition here for the authentication. So I'll just remove this. If the user is authenticated, then only this response will be returned, otherwise it will throw some error. Now as I mentioned the permission classes, but I think I have forgotten to import these things here. So here I will be importing the permission classes, the permission classes decorator. From REST framework.decorators, import permission classes. And there are lots of permission classes actually. One is authenticated. That means if the person is authenticated, then only response will be returned. Otherwise, it will just return some random error message. There is one more permission class called allow any. So if I replace this is authenticated with allow any, even though if the client is not authenticated, then also he will be able to receive this response. So that's the difference between is authenticated and allow any. Now let us discuss about another permission class which is admin user. The moment I replace this allow any with the is admin user, that means only super users will be able to access this view. So that's all about the permission classes. And if you want to specify this permission classes decorator to every function, then it's really painful to apply this permission classes to all the functions, because in the production level environment you will be having some thousands of functions and it's literally painful to mention the decorator for each and every function. So in such case, we mention the permission classes in the settings.py, which is a global setting. We don't have to mention the permission classes for each and every function here. So in the settings.py, in the REST framework settings, default permission classes, here you can put something like is authenticated. this is as equal as putting the decorator to each and every view here. But for now, as this is not necessary, I'm just removing it here. But if you want to apply this is authenticated permission class as the global setting, then you need to put inside this REST framework dictionary. I will be just doing the Control Z. Now let us test this permission class decorator. I will be sending the request using the postman to this protected view. So the URL is users protected and the type of request is get. I will send the request. It is saying that the given token is not valid. So first I need to get the access token from the API/token, the JWT URL. Method get is not allowed. I will use the post, and here I will be typing the username and the password. Now I will get the access token. Once I get the access token, I will try to access the protected view, user/protected. Here get request, and in the body I don't have to specify any body, but in the headers I have to specify the authorization, which is a bearer token. I will replace it with the token. I will send the request. It is saying me that you don't have the permission to perform this action. It's because I'm not the admin user. I'm just the user. So I will remove this, and I will put something like is authenticated here. Now I will be having permission here. I will send the request. Now it is saying me that I'm already authenticated. Now if I remove the authorization header, it is saying that authorization credentials were not provided. Even if I don't provide the authorization, if I replace this permission class as allow any, then it works, because I'm allowing everyone whether he is authenticated or not. So for now I will just put it as is authenticated, and if I remove the permission class, it will throw some error. I'll just mention the authorization header. Now I will send the request. I'm already authenticated. So that's it about the permission classes. Instead of putting if else conditions inside the view, rather I will just put a decorator that beautifies my code, and here I can put various settings like is authenticated or is admin user or allow any or any other stuff. Hi, in this video we are going to deal with the view set and routers. So what is a view set? So let me just list the functions here. One is book list API, one is book create API. Let me expand this. Yep. The book update API and the book delete API. Now we have these four functions, and I want to create a single class that can do all these four functions. Let me create a class. The class is book view set. So this is a view set for the book model that can do all the four operations: the list, the create, the update, the delete, of course even patch. This single class can be used for all these functionalities. So when you create a book view set, you don't have to create these APIs, the list, the create, the update, the delete separately. The book view set class itself will be having all these functions, and this kind of functionality will be provided by the Django REST framework. When you have a single class that can do all the four things, you need set of URLs to map with each functionality. Let's say the book list API needs some URL, the book create API needs some URL, the book update API needs some URL, the book delete. Even though there is a single class that is doing all these four functionalities, we need four unique URLs to map with these four functionalities. So in order to do that, earlier we have created four URLs. If you can get into our code and if you see the urls.py, we have declared four URLs. Now we can make use of router to automatically declare these four URLs. We don't have to explicitly declare it once you declare a router. So that's all about the router. I will just type that here. I'll just copy paste the paths which we have declared earlier. Now we create a single router that can do the job of all these four paths. So I will create a router slash, and this is my base URL for the router, and this URL, depending upon the type of request we are sending and the format of URL we are sending, this router will decide what to do next. So when you declare a router something like this, when you send the get request, I'll just type the request here, the get request with the router, this will fetch all the books because the request is get. Now, if I put the post router, and if we provide some body in the post request, this will add the book. And the body should be having the JSON format of book details such that the book will be added to the database. Now, if we use the put request, here also we need the body. And here so we have to provide the ID of the book which we want to update. That ID we should put it at the end. Let's say 1/. Now this will update the book with ID is equal to 1. And we also have to pass the body along with the ID. The same with patch request as well. Router/1. Here also we pass the body and a particular attribute will be updated. Update a particular attribute of a book with ID is equal to 1. The same with delete as well. Let me expand this so that I can type properly. I'll just put it here. Now the same with delete request. Delete router. When I send the delete request, that means we have to specify which book we want to delete. That means we have to provide the ID of the book which we want to delete. Deletes a book with ID is equal to 1. But if you declare a router, this single router will handle all these 5 functionalities. So that's about the router. The view set is just to replace all the individual functions which we are declaring, and the router will replace all the individual URLs which we are declaring. So let us implement this. First of all, I want to get into the apis.py. Here I will create a view set. A view set is a class. So here class book view set, and we have to inherit the view set's properties from the model view set. So first we need to import the view sets here from the REST framework. From REST framework dot view sets import model view set. So I'll just import that here and inherit here. And here we need to specify 2 things. One is the query set and one is the serializer class. The query set is nothing but which all books we want to consider for this get, put, post, all these kinds of requests. And the serializer class is just to serialize and deserialize depends on the type of request. So once this is done, we have to map this with the router because the single class is having 5 different functionalities. Of course, more than 5. But we need to declare the URLs to map with these 5 different kinds of functionalities. Now, as we declare the view set, we don't have to declare these functions because this view set is acting as an all-rounder for all these kinds of requests. Now, I have to create URLs for all these kinds of functionalities. So here in the urls.py, instead of declaring each URL, I will be deleting these and I will declare a single router that can do all these functionalities. So here from REST framework, I will just import the routers. Import default router and I will declare the router here. Router is equal to default router, and here I have to specify the path. So router.register book base name is equal to book, but in this case in the whiteboard I have declared the router as router slash. That means all the router URL will start with the router here. So if I declare it as book, all the URLs will start from the book. So in this case I will just replace it with the router. Let us replicate the same whatever we have done in the whiteboard. But if you see in the project level URLs, all the book related URLs are with starting with book slash. So in the Postman also we have to start with book slash. So here if I edit that whiteboard here, the router will be followed after book slash. The same thing with all the requests. Book slash. Here also book slash. Here also book and then slash. Now let me get back to the app level urls.py, and here I have created the router. Now I have to include this router in the URL patterns. So here path include router.urls, and here I have to import the include from the Django.urls. So here I am importing the include. Let us recap whatever we have done till now. We have created a router that generates a set of URLs for get, post, put, patch, delete, etc. And then each of this kind of request is mapped with the view set here. If I get into the APIs.py, I have created a view set that can do all these things like get, post, put, delete, whatever we have declared above. So simply we just replace these many functions with a single class, and the same with URLs.py. We have replaced 4 URLs with a single router. Basically, this will ease the job of a developer. Now let us test this. Let me get into the URLs.py. As I declared the router URL as a router, I will just have to mention the same here, book/router. Now let me send the request, the get request. The get request means it should get all the books. Yes, I'm getting all the books here. Now let us test the other URLs as well from the router. Let us get back to the whiteboard. Here, the post will add the book. So here I will be using the post request, and the body I will be typing something like the name is equal to some book, and the author is equal to some author, and let the price be something like 50. Now the moment I set this as a post, the view set will understand that I have to add this book to the database. So I will just send. As you can see, the book got added. Now let's get back to the get request. I will delete the body, and you can see that the fourth book was added here with the ID is equal to 4. So that's about the post request. Now let us use the put request. In the put request, we have to specify which book we want to update. So here we have to specify the ID. Let's say the ID is 4. That means we have to mention the ID in the URL itself. And here we need to set this as put request, and we have to set the body as well. So here I will be just copying the body here and pasting the body here. Now I will just change the name to some other book. Now I will send the request. You can see that the ID, the book with the ID is equal to 4 got changed to some other book. Let me use the get request again, and I will remove this ID from the URL. Now I will send the request. You can see that the fourth book was updated. Now it's the same with the delete request as well. I'll put this as a delete, and I just have to mention which book I want to delete. I want to delete the book with the ID is equal to 4. So I'm mentioning the ID as 4 here, and I will send the request. Now let me get all the books. Now you should be able to see that the book with the ID 4 should get deleted. I'll get all the books. Now you can see that the book with the ID 4 is missing. That means it got deleted. So that's all about the view sets and the routers. Thank you. Hi, in this session we are going to map the two tables in the database. So currently as we have two tables, one is the user model and one is the book model. Here if you see the book app, the models.py, here you can see there are three attributes. One is name, one is author, one is price. So I will be mentioning the price as well here. Now as you can see here, this author is a char field. Now instead of mentioning this author as a char field, what I will do is I will map this author with the user model. That means each author is an user. So I will be mapping this author with the user model. So instead of mentioning this as a char field, I will be replacing this with a foreign key. I'm assuming that you know what is a foreign key, because when you are learning this course, that means you must be good at the databases. If you are not aware about the foreign key, please learn it before continuing. Currently, I will remove the author field and I will apply the migrations. Python manage.py make migrations. Now this will remove the author field. Now I will migrate here, Python manage.py migrate. Now I will add the author field again, but with the foreign key with the user model. Now we have to map this foreign key with the user model, and max length is not required for this. And this user we import it from the Django, because Django has the built-in user model. From django.contrib.auth.models import user. Now let us apply the migrations again. Python manage.py make migrations. looks like the foreign key needs the on delete argument. On delete is equal to models dot cascade. That means if the user that mapped to a particular book is deleted, that means the book also will be deleted. That's all about the models dot cascade. Now I will run the migrations again, make migrations. It is asking me two things. One is provide one default value, or quit and manually provide the default value in models.py. So here there are two ways to provide the default value. One is we can directly provide it here in the models.py. Here I will do something like default. So here let's say the default is none. That means if we don't provide any foreign key, by default it will take none. And we should also accept the null fields in the database. So null is equal to true. So I will be cancelling this and I will be running the migrations again. Yep, migrations were applied. Now I will do the migrate python manage.py migrate. Now in order to see the database, earlier I have told you one way, like we can click on the SQLite 3. This will show the database. And you can see that all the authors are null because we did not map this with any of the user model. So if I get into the user model auth user, here there is only one user with my username. So currently what shall we do is, instead of seeing the database in the VS Code, rather let us open the admin panel and let's see the database there. For now let me open the book model. I want to see the same thing in the admin panel. But even before getting into the admin panel, first we need to create one admin account, which is a super user account. For that, python manage.py create super user. Here I need to create the super user, the username be admin and email address be empty, and I will create some password here. Now the password was created, and let us try to log in using these details. Now I will open the incognito tab and here localhost 8000 and here /admin. Now this will open up the admin panel. I think I need to run the server. Python manage.py run server. Now let us refresh again. Yeah, the admin panel was opened, and earlier we created one super user, right? Using the same credentials, I'm logging in here. Now once we log in, we can see that we have user model here. Like now there are two users. One is Pawan, which we created earlier, and one is admin, which is a super user, which we just created now. The staff status is nothing but whether he is a super user or not. The admin we created using the CLI, which is a super user, but the Pawan is just a normal user, not a super user. The super user can do anything in the database. He can log into admin panel, he can delete the users, he can create the users, or he can update the users, and he can even manipulate other databases as well. I mean the other tables in the databases as well. Now as we have the book model here, I want to display the book model here. Currently by default it's displaying the users model because this is a built-in model. But in order to display the book model in the admin panel, we need to get into the admin.py, and here we need to register the model. Admin.site.register book model, and we need to import the book model from the models.py. From models import book model. Now I will just refresh the page. Now you can see that inside the book app there are book models. Now if I get into this, it is showing something like book model object 3, book model object 2, book model object 1, but it's not showing the book name, rather it is displaying as objects. So we can fix this. We can fix this in two ways. One is you have to put something like some magic function here, string self, we need to return self.name, and the name will be returned here so that we can read the book name directly from the list. There is one more fix here. Instead of directly putting the name, we can remove this for now, and we can edit the admin.py such that instead of just the list, it will display something like table with all the attributes. Currently it's displaying only the name, but it has three attributes. One is name, one is author, one is price. So I want to display all the attributes here rather than just the name. So what I will do is I will create some class here, class book model admin, and here admin dot model admin, and here I need to mention something like which all fields I need to consider. I mean which all fields I want to display. So list display is equal to, for now I would like to just display the name and the price. Now if you refresh and see, I think I need to register this book model admin in the admin.site.register. So here I will just type something like book model admin. Now let me refresh the page. Now you can see that you can see all the attributes in this table, not just the name. You can see the name and you can see the price as well. So here in the book B, the author is empty because we made it null, but we can even assign the author here because we mapped the user model with the foreign key. Now let us mention the author as well here. It is showing that all the authors are null. So for the 5 a.m. club, I am mentioning myself as an author. I will save this. And even for the alchemist, I will mention myself as author. And I will save this. And for the book bay, I don't want to mention myself as an author. Hi, in this session we are going to discuss how to override the view set. So before getting into this, let us recap what we have done earlier with the view set. So earlier we have created a class with the view set and we have mentioned the query set and the serializer class. And whenever we are sending the request to this view set, depending upon the type of request and type of the URL structure, it is navigating to get request, post request, put request, and delete request respectively. So here I'm just mentioning that again. When we are sending get request, it's returning all the books. When we are using post request, it is adding book. And when we are sending the put request, it is updating book. And during the put request, we are also sending the ID. And during the delete request, and when we are passing the ID through the URL, this is deleting the book of a particular ID. So this is what we are doing with the view set currently. We are sending the request to the router and the router is routing to a particular function in the view set. So in the API.py, you can see there is a view set. So here in the view set, there are some functions that is taking care of all these types of requests. But if you want to override this, if you want to write a custom logic, then you can mention these functions separately inside the view set. Let's say for get request, you can use something like list, and for the post request, you can use something like create. I mean, these functions were already there in this class, in the super class. But if you don't mention anything, you can expect the default behavior of this view set. But if you mention the functions explicitly, that means you are customizing, you are overriding the existing functions. So let us override the existing functions. And even before overriding the existing functions, let us try to change our problem statement so that we can better illustrate this overriding. So here, let us change the problem statement. Here, get is returning all the books. So rather, let us change this to something like this. Instead of returning all the books, let us customize this. Let us customize the problem statement. Here, instead of returning all the books, return the books that belongs to logged in user. That means if I log in as Pawan, then I need to get all the books where I am the author, where the Pawan is the author. So here it's the same with the post request. Add book with author is equal to logged in user. And for putting, I mean for updating the book, update only if logged in user is equal to author of that book. Let me move this here and let me expand this. And it's the same thing with the deletion. Even before deleting, we will check if that book belongs to the logged in user. If yes, then only we delete. Otherwise, the other book author should not be able to delete other books. So here, delete only if logged in user is equal to author of the book. That means he should be able to delete the books that belongs to him only, not belongs to others. So we have modified the problem statement. We have customized the problem statement. When we customize the problem statement, we cannot expect the default view set to handle these kinds of cases. When the problem statement is customized, we also have to write the custom logic. So here, if you get into the code, here, first of all, let me create all the functions. Here, update, and here, destroy. These functions were built-in functions. We are just overriding it. So here the list is used for get and create is used for post. Let me just mention here with the indentation. Yes. The update is used for put and destroy is used for delete. We are overriding this built-in functionalities. That's it. So if you don't override, what happens is it will return all the books. It won't return the books that belongs to logged in user. But when we are customizing the problem statement, something like this, we need to write the custom functions, the custom logic here. So in the list, we need to pass something like self. Self means this class. And this class is receiving some request from the URL. So we need to pass the request as well. So let me uncomment this and insert the list. So here, rather than getting all the books, we are getting the books that belongs to logged in user only. So here in the list, we need to get the books. Books equal to book model dot objects dot all. But here this dot all is just fetching all the books, but I don't want all the books. I just want the books that belongs to logged in user. So first I need to get who is the logged in user. So here user is equal to request.user. This request.user just returns whoever is logged in. Then once we get the user, then we have to get something like filter where the author is equal to user. That means we fetch the books where the author is equal to user. So here the user means the request.user, which means the logged in user. So how the DRF will get to know who is logged in? Because when I'm sending the request to this view, I'm also passing the token, the JWT token. Based on the JWT token, it will fetch the user using the request.user. And then we are mapping that user with the author. Now we fetch the books that belongs to the logged in user only rather than fetching all the books. Then once we get the books, we need to get the serializer to convert these books into something like JSON. So how do we get the serializer? The serializer is here itself, the serializer class which we already mentioned. So here let us get the serializer from this class, or you can even get the serializer from here. You can directly mention book model serializer. But let us make it dynamic. Let us get the serializer from here itself into this function rather than directly mentioning this. So here the serializer is equal to self.getSerializer. And here we need to pass the books where many is equal to true, because this filter may return more than one books. And now once you get the serializer, we need to return the response with the data. So return response, and the data is stored in the serializer because we converted it into JSON. Now this is all about the list. Now let us test this endpoint. Let us test the listing using the Postman. So in the Postman, so here if I'm using the get request, that means it will invoke the list function here. So let me send the request. It is showing connection refuser. Let me run the server, python manage.py, run server. And here I will send the request again. Now it is showing me some error. Field ID expected, but a number Django.models.anonymous user. Anonymous user means the user is not logged in yet. So let us do something like this. If the request.user, that means if the user is not logged in, let us throw some error. So let's do something like this. If user not logged in. So if not request.user.is authenticated, Then we send some custom message here, please log in. So let me send the request again. Now it is sending me the message, please log in. So let us log in now. Let us use the API token, and here we need to send the username and password. Username, my name, and I'm going to send my password. So after successful authentication, I will be getting some key here. I think the method get is not allowed. So I'm using the post. It is showing me some error. I need to append the slash here. The URL is wrong here. So I appended the slash here. Now I'll send the request. Now I got the key, the access key, which I will use. Now if I will get into my previous URL, which is the book router with the get request, and here inside the authorization I'm going to mention the bearer token. Now if I send the request using this, now you can see that I did not return all the books. Even though there are 3 books, only these 2 books were returned because these 2 belongs to me. If you get into the admin panel here, you can see that there are 3 books, but there are only 2 books where author is equal to my name, my username. Now as the book bit doesn't belongs to me, that's not displaying in the postman. So we successfully executed the get request here. Hi, in the previous video we have created the list function. Similarly, in this session we are going to do with the create, update and destroy. The create is used for post request, the update is used for put request, and destroy is used for the delete request. Now in the previous video, if you see that in the list function I have sent 2 arguments. One is the self and one is the request. The reason why we sent the self is we have used the self here to get the serializer class from here. This self represents this entire class, the book view set, and self.getSerializer gives the serializer class, and that's the reason we have used the self. And the reason why we use the request is we are getting the logged in user from the request.user. So that's the reason we need these 2 arguments inside the list. Similarly, we need the same arguments in other functions as well. So I will be uncommenting this, and this I will comment, and inside the create we are passing 2 things. One is the self and one is the request. So here we need to check if the user is logged in. If not, we will send a response saying that please log in. If the user is logged in, then we will get back, and here the data we get something like this. Data is equal to request.data, and if you see in the models, we need to send the name, the author, the price. But now I'm not going to send the author. I'm going to send the name and the price. Why? Because this author we are getting directly from the request.user. If you see the previous function which we have created, here we are getting the author from the request.user itself. So similarly, I will be getting the author from the request.user, and I will be getting the other data from request.data. So the other data mean the book name and the price. These things I will get it from request.data, and the author, this I don't have to send because the JWT itself holds the user details, and the request.user will give the logged in user details. So here the author I will be using request.user, and I will club this data and then enters into the database. Now let us see here. Now we repeat the same thing. The serializer is equal to self.getSerializer, and here instead of mentioning the books, we just mention the data. And here when we are saving the serializer, we do something like, and here when we are saving the serializer, here in this data we just have the name and price, but we have to override the author also. So this overriding I will just type it here. Author is equal to user, because we are sending the data into the serializer, and this data has only the name and price but not the author. We need to override the author as well. By default the author will be null, but when we are providing the author inside the serializer.save, that will be overwritten, and that's how this is working. Now once the serializer is saved, that means it got entered into the database. and then we are returning some response. We just put some message, something like book created. Now let us do with the update as well. It's the same thing again. We will copy this arguments and we will just paste it here, and this I will comment, and again we are just checking if the user is authenticated. If not, we are just returning some message like please login. And the same thing here again, the data is equal to request.data, and we also have to pass the primary key, because while updating we need to mention which book we are updating. So I'm just passing the pk here, which is a primary key, and this request.data is nothing but the data that needs to be replaced with existing book. And first we need to get this existing book. So what shall we do is, the book is equal to book model dot objects dot get. For getting only one book we use get. For getting a lot of books, like a list of books, then we use filter. That's the difference between the get and the filter. So here id is equal to pk, which is a primary key, and once we get the book we need to update this book using the serializer. But before updating we need to check if this book belongs to the logged in user. So let us check that if book.author is equal to request.user. So this is a condition here. We need to check if the author is equal to logged in user. The request.user is nothing but the logged in user. Now, if this satisfies, then only the user is supposed to update the book. Otherwise, he won't be having any permission to update the book. Now, I'll just write a condition here. Data is equal to request.data, and we also have to declare the serializer. Serializer is equal to, we will get the serializer from here itself. So we use the self dot get serializer, and instance is equal to book, the data is equal to data. This is nothing but the data which we have to update. This I will be removing here as I have mentioned it here. And again the same thing will repeat. If the serializer is valid, serializer dot save, otherwise don't save. Then once this is done, we are going to return the response book updated. If not, we are going to return something like you are not author of this book. Now let us try to update this. First of all, let us list all the books that belongs to me. So I will be using the get request and I will sending. So here I will be getting two books. One is the Alchemist and the 5 AM Club. These two books belongs to me. Now I want to update this book. The book with the ID is equal to 1. So I will be copying this, and the router, I also have to mention the ID of the book here. And as the updation takes place in the put request, I will be putting the put here, and inside the body I will be changing the name to something like the Alchemist updated. Now I can remove the ID here because I'm mentioning the ID here. Now I will send the request. It is showing me that the book is updated. Now let's get back to the previous one. I mean the previous get request, and I will send the request. Now you can see that the book is updated. The book with the name Alchemist is updated. So the put request is working. The customized put request is working. Let me remove the authorization. Let us try to change the book without logging in. That means we have to remove this from the headers. So here I will be removing this token and I will put something like no auth. That means I am not logged in yet. If I send the request, it is saying that please log in. Similarly with the destroy also, that means the delete request. Here I will be sending the same arguments from the update function. The same thing will repeat again. If user is not authenticated, that means we have to send some message like please log in. And here we need to get the book with the ID is equal to primary key. And we also have to check if book.author equal to request.user. And if yes, then we need to delete the book. We can delete it directly here, book.delete, the book is deleted. If not, we need to send some response like you are not authorized to delete this book. You are not authorized to delete this book. So let us try to delete the book. So here in the body, looks like I don't have to send anybody because I'm mentioning the ID in here itself. Let's say the book with the ID 1, and let the request be delete, and I will be sending the request, And if I send the request, the book was deleted. The book was deleted because it belongs to me. If I don't mention the authorization header, that means I'm not logged in. I won't be able to delete this book. It is saying please log in. That means this view is protected. And that's all about the overriding the view sets. And I hope you enjoyed this session, and we'll see you in the upcoming video. Thank you. In the previous video, we have created various methods inside the view set, such as list, create, update, and destroy, which is a delete. But if you observe here, we have written a repetitive code. Let's say in the line number 86, if the user is not authenticated, that means we are returning a response saying that please log in. Again, the code is repeated here. Again, the same logic. Here also, again, it's the same logic. If the user is not authenticated, please log in. Again, the same code is repeated here. So instead of repeating the same code in all the functions, we can use the permission classes. If you observe in the previous videos where I have written the function based views, there I have used a decorator for the permission classes. But here inside the view sets, as this is a class, we cannot put the decorator for the class. Instead, we use the permission classes here itself. Permission classes is equal to is authenticated. The moment I mention this, I don't have to mention any of these if statements, because this permission classes has built-in if statement which will check if the person is authenticated. If not authenticated, it automatically throws an error. So I will be removing the if statements here. So let us test this. Let me invoke the create endpoint without any authentication credentials, and let us see how this view set responds. So let me open the Postman and let me invoke the create endpoint. So here book, router, and here we need to use the post request for creating, and inside the body we need to mention the data. So let's get back to our book model. Here we need to mention the name, the author, and the price. So here let the name be the 5 a.m. club, and let the author be the author with the ID 2. Finally, we need to mention the price as well, which is, let's say, $10. And here the name should be inside the string quotations. So let me send the request. Before sending the request, I want to remove all the tokens because I want to invoke this endpoint without any authorization. So I will be removing the token here, which is a bearer token. And after removing the token, I'm no more authenticated to this backend. So I will be sending the request, and let us see the response. I think the server is not running. Let me get back and run the server. Python manage.py run server. And let me send the request. Here you can see that it is throwing some response, that is authentication credentials were not provided. So here if you observe, even though we have removed the if statements here, this permission class is handling this case. If the user is authenticated, then only it will give access to these endpoints, otherwise it will not give. So by doing this, we have removed the unnecessary if statements inside these methods, and that's the beauty of the permission classes. Now let us authenticate and then invoke the endpoint. So here, before invoking the endpoint, we need to authenticate. So let us get back to the another endpoint. So let's get back to the urls.py here. Here you can see that we have declared a URL API/token. It is used to generate the JWT token. So I will be using the same endpoint here. With the post request, I will be putting the body with my username and password. My username and the password, let it be 1234. I'm trying to log in, so I will send the request. Now I got the access token. I will put the access token in the authorization where the token type is bearer, and I will be pasting the token here. Now the moment I get the token, that means I am authenticated. So as I am authenticated, now let me get back to my previous endpoint, that is /book/router, and I will be using the post request, and similarly as we did before, we need to mention the book name where the name is the 5 a.m. club, and let the author be the author with the user ID 2, and we also have to mention the price. Let the price be $10. So as I'm authenticated, I should be able to post it to this endpoint. So I will be sending the request. Looks like I got the error. I think I need to put the slash here. Yes, now it will work. Looks like I don't have to send the author. It's because the moment we send the bearer token, now the backend will decide who is the author, because here we are using user equal to request.user. So we don't have to explicitly send the user, as bearer token itself will contain the user details. So I remove the author here and I will be sending the request. And here I have to mention the data is equal to data. Now let me send the request. Now you can see a message that is saying book created. Now let us try to list all the books here by using the get request. Now I listed the books. And let me create one more book. Let's say the 6 a.m. club. Of course it doesn't exist, but let's create for an example. And let the price be 20. So I will be using the post request and I will be sending the request. So the book is created. Now if I use the get request, I can list all the books. Now you can see that I'm able to list all the books. I can also get a detailed view of a specific book by mentioning the ID in the URL. Let's say I need the detailed view of this book, the 5 a.m. club. I need to mention the ID in the URL itself, /15. Now let me try. Now I should get the details of the 5 a.m. club. Now you can see that you got the detailed view as well. So that's all about the permission classes inside the view sets. See you in the upcoming videos. Thank you. Hi, in this video we are going to learn about the pagination. So before getting into the pagination, let us see what is a pagination. Here you can see all the results of the footwear. Now if I scroll down a bit, now you can see there are some numbers. In the page number 1, let's say there are 30 items displayed. In the page number 2, another 30 items will be displayed. And in the page number 3, another 30 items will be displayed. So the entire data is split into the small pages, and that is about the pagination. So in this session we are going to program in the backend for the pagination. So here, before getting into the pagination, let me open the Postman and let us list all the books that we inserted into the database. So here in the Postman, so I use the API/token for getting the JWT token. And here inside the body I need to mention the username and password, and I will send the request. Now I got the access key. I will copy this and let's get back to the previous request. And here, in order to use this, we need to fill the bearer token inside the authorization. And in the body, I will be removing the body as it is not required for the get request. And I will list all the books. Now you can see that there are 2 books here. But in order to demonstrate you the pagination, I need to fill a lot of books here so that you can better understand with a good example. So in order to create a good example, I will create some dummy books as fast as possible. So the manual creation takes time. I need to post each and every book using the body by mentioning the details in the body. But rather I will use some module that can help me to create some fake books. So the module is nothing but the faker. So let me install the faker here. I will turn off the server and I will do pip install faker, and once the installation is done, I will write the code inside the shell itself, python manage.py shell. And here, first of all, I will list all the users. For user in user.objects.all, so let me print all the usernames, user.username. So I think the user is not defined. We need to import the user from django.contrib.auth.models, because user is the built-in model of Django. So from auth.models, let's import user. Now again, let's repeat the same step for user in user.objects.all. I just want to list all the users. Print user.username. So there are 2 users currently. I want to create the books where I am the author. So for this, let's import the book model as well. From book app.models, import book model. And here let's import the faker module as well. From faker, import faker. And here let's declare fake is equal to faker, which is a function. And let us create 20 books. Number of books is equal to 20. and I have to write a for loop here in order to create 20 books. So for in range number of books, and here I use the faker module to fetch the name of the book. So book name is equal to fake dot sentence. Fake dot sentence is nothing but it helps us to write a sentence by taking some inputs. Let's say I want a sentence with the word count as 3. So I'll just put number of words is equal to 3. That means it creates a sentence for me with 3 words. So that will be my book name. We also have to specify author. I want to specify myself as an author. So what I will do is user dot objects dot get, where username is equal to, we have listed 2 users here. So I will just type my name here. So we fetched the author, and we also have to mention the price. And as we are creating 20 books, let us create 20 random prices. So fake dot random int, and here I want to specify the minimum price as 10 and maximum price as 50. Now let us create the book. So once we decide the book name, the author and the price, now we have to insert it into the database. So book is equal to book model. Book model is nothing but the blueprint of the book table in the database. So we are using the book model here, and here we have to specify the name is equal to book name, and author is equal to author, and the price is equal to price. And we also have to save it into the database, book.save. This will create 20 books into the database. I guess it got created, so let me open the Postman and let me print all the books again. And before doing that, I need to run the server, python -.py run server. Now let me send the request again. I think the token got expired because we restarted the server. Let me log in again and get the token. So I got the access token, and let me get back to the previous endpoint, and here I will be changing the bearer token, and I will send the request again. Now you can see that lots of books are created, lots of fake books are created using the faker module. Now I can demonstrate you the pagination. So before getting into this, we need to configure few things. First of all, we need to import the pagination from the REST framework. From REST framework dot pagination, import page number pagination, and we are going to use this into our view set. So here we are mentioning the pagination class is equal to page number pagination. Now in the list function, instead of returning all the data, we return the data that belongs to the current page. So initially the page number will be 1, and all these things will be handled by page number pagination class. So before returning the paginated response, we need to create the paginated query set. So in order to do that, we create a paginated query set, page equal to self dot paginate query set. So the book model dot object dot filter author is equal to user represents all the books belongs to a particular author. But when we are returning the API response, we don't have to return all the books belonging to a particular author. We just have to return the books that fits into the page. So in order to do that, we need to provide some settings in the settings.py where we have to mention the page size. So here if you get into the REST framework, here we create something like page size is equal to, we can put 5. That means only 5 elements should be displayed in each page. So the moment you mention the page size is equal to 5, the PageNet query set will only hold 5 books in each page. And inside the serializer, instead of passing all the books, we pass only the books that belongs to this current page. And similarly, instead of returning the response, we return the paginated response. Self dot get paginated response, and here we use the serializer.data. The difference between the response and paginated response is, in the paginated response, it will also give the URLs that helps us to navigate to next pages. But in the response, we just get the data. But in the paginated response, we get the URLs to navigate to the next pages. So let me use the pagination. Here I will be mentioning page is equal to 1. That means I want the elements that are mapped to page 1. Now I will send the request. Now you can see that I got only 5 results because I mentioned the page size as 5. And if you can see that I have written the paginated response, not the response. So I got the extra JSON fields. One is count, which is telling me the sum of element counts of all the pages, and also it is giving me the URL of the next page. I can simply use this to navigate to the next page. And it is saying that the previous page is null because we are in the page 1. There won't be any such thing like page equal to 0. So the previous is null, and it is also giving me the next page, and it is also giving me the total count of all the elements in all the pages. So if I mention the page is equal to 2, which is same as this URL. If I want to navigate to page number 2, I can simply use this URL. I can just copy this and I will just put it here and I will send the request. I got all the 5 elements that are mapped to page number 2. Now if I want to get into the previous page, I will just use the URL given by previous JSON field. So I will be putting that here. Now I will be navigated to previous page. Now you may get a doubt that the book view set might have the page size as 5, but in the production level you will be having multiple view sets. Let's say you have 2 view sets. In the first view set you need the page size as 3, in the second view set you need the page size as 5. In such cases you should not put the page size in the settings because this is a global setting. Instead you have to create a separate class and you have to inherit the page number pagination. So I will create a custom pagination class, custom pagination, and here I will be inheriting the page number pagination. And here I have to declare the page size as 2, and this custom pagination I will use for whatever the views I want. If I have multiple view sets, now I will use this custom pagination class whichever the view set I want. Now let's consider you have multiple view sets. Then I will create more custom paginations. Let's say this is custom pagination 2 and this is custom pagination 3, and the page size of this custom pagination is 2, and let this be 1, and let this be 3. Now if I want this book view set to have the page size 3, then I will use the custom pagination 3. I will replace that with the default page number pagination. Now let me check that. If I use page is equal to 1, now I need to get only 3 elements. Now you can see that as the page size is 3, I got only the 3 elements. So that's all about the pagination. See you in the upcoming videos. Thank you. Hi. In the previous video, we have implemented the page number pagination. But in the REST framework.pagination, along with the page number pagination, there are 2 other types of paginations. The first one is the limit offset pagination, and another one is cursor pagination. We will study about the cursor pagination in the upcoming video, but for now let us concentrate on limit offset pagination. So before diving into the limit offset pagination, let us see the drawback of page number pagination. So let me open the whiteboard, and here let us consider a database having a table, and let me number the rows in the database. Let's consider that there are 15 elements in the database, and here if I'm using the page number pagination, let me put the heading here, page number pagination. So let this be the heading, and in the page number pagination we are passing the page size as a parameter. So page size, this we will put it in settings.py or in the custom pagination class. So this is the setting, and in the query parameters we are sending only the page number, which is nothing but the page. So let's consider the page is equal to 1. So when the page is equal to 1 and the page size is equal to 5, as the page is equal to 1, we fetch these 5 elements because the page size is equal to 5. If the page number is 2, then we fetch these 5 elements. And similarly for the page number 3, 4, 5, etc. But let's consider a case where you need a data from 3 to 7, which is not possible using page number pagination, because in the page number pagination we are just passing the page as a parameter. We are not passing any offset. We are not passing the starting index. So in order to resolve this, we need to pass the starting index as well. It's nothing but the offset. So if I consider the offset is equal to 2, that means I am saying to the backend that skip all the elements till 2 and then start from the 3 till the page size. And in this case the page size is nothing but the limit, and the page number is not required here. So I'm just repeating again, as the offset is equal to 2, I'm saying to the backend that I have to skip the first two elements. And then after the offset, we have set the limit is equal to 5. That means the next 5 elements will be considered. In this way, I can get the elements from 3 to 7 using the pagination. And as we are using the limit and offset, this type of pagination is nothing but limit offset pagination. So in the limit offset pagination, we have to pass the offset and the limit. Let's get back and start implementing this. So here I will be removing all the custom paginations. And here I'll just put it as, instead of putting the custom pagination 3, I'll just put it as custom pagination. And here, instead of page number pagination, I will inherit the limit offset pagination. And here in the query parameters, I'm going to pass the limit and the offset. So I want this class to understand the limit and offset from the URL because the query parameters were present in the URL. We will pass the query parameters something like this. It will be something like limit is equal to 2 and offset is equal to 2. We pass in this way in the URL itself. So we should make this class to understand this query parameter. So in order to do that, we need to specify the query parameter. So limit query parameter is equal to limit and offset query parameter is equal to offset, so that whenever this class receives the limit and offset from the URL, it can map it accordingly. So I will be deleting these comments. Hope you understood this. And here instead of custom pagination 3, I will put the custom pagination, and let me test this using the Postman. So let me start the server and let me open the Postman. It is saying that the custom pagination object has no attribute count. So in order to resolve this issue, we need to pass the query parameters because we have defined the query parameters here. So here I will be mentioning the limit is equal to 5. That means I have to fetch 5 elements at a time, and let the offset is equal to 3. So if you observe here, I got 5 elements because I have set the limit is equal to 5 and the offset is equal to 3. That means I have to skip the first 3 elements. That means the backend will skip the first 3 elements. So this is element 1, this is element 2, this is element 3. That means the limit will start from here. That means it will consider from the ID is equal to 18 because we have to skip first 3 elements, as we mentioned the offset is equal to 3. So as the limit is equal to 5, it will consider from 18 to 18 plus 5. That means 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So it will consider from student stop to reach low serve. As you can see that the last item is reach low serve and the first item is student stop development. So that is about the limit offset pagination. So just summarizing the difference between the page number pagination and limit offset pagination. In the limit offset pagination, you can mention the offset so that the backend will skip till that index which we mentioned it in the offset. And similarly, we are getting the next and previous also, which we have seen in the page number pagination. Thank you. Hi. In the previous video, we have studied about the limit offset pagination. And in this session, we are going to study about the performance bottleneck of limit offset pagination and also how cursor pagination is going to solve the performance bottleneck faced by the limit offset pagination. So let's get back to the limit offset pagination. Let me open the whiteboard. So here this is our previous example, and here we put the offset is equal to 2 and the limit is equal to 5. When you put the offset is equal to 2, that means we are saying that to skip the first 2 elements. And then as the limit is equal to 5, it will consider the next 5 elements. So now it is fine, but when you put the offset as 1 lakh, that means you have to skip the 1 lakh elements. So we have to skip it sequentially. Let's say the item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, so on. We have to skip up to 1 lakh elements. And this will consume lot of computer resources, and hence this is a bottleneck. So in order to avoid this bottleneck, there is something called cursor pagination. So in the cursor pagination, we don't set any offset, we don't set any limit. The only thing here is the page size and ordering. Page size, let's say 5, and there will be one more thing called the ordering. Let us discuss about the ordering later. For now, I'll put it as ID. That means we are saying to the backend that before giving the paginated response, order it by using some parameter and then give me the response. It can be ID, it can be price, it can be the timestamp. This is how you sort it in Amazon, like sort by price, sort by rating, etc. So let's discuss about the ordering later. For now, let's consider the page size. So here, as the page size is 5, initially I will be able to fetch the first 5 elements. Now, if I want to fetch the elements from 6 to 10, I don't have to skip the first 5 elements. It's because the cursor of the index 5 will be sent to the front end. Whenever I want from 6 to 10, I don't have to discard the first 5 because the cursor, the address of this is already stored. Whenever I want from 6 to 10, I use the cursor of 5 and then I will fetch from 6 to 10. Because I already have a pointer here, why should I discard first 5 again? Similarly, when you want to fetch the 1 lakh and fifth element, I don't have to discard first 1 lakh elements because when I have the pointer of 1 lakh element, I don't have to sequentially discard all the elements till 1 lakh. I will use this pointer and I will fetch the next 5 elements. I know it is confusing in the beginning, but I will explain once again to you. Let's say you fetch the first 5 elements. When you fetch the first 5 elements, in order to fetch from 6 to 10, you need the address of 5. That is nothing but the cursor. Let's say the cursor of 5 is something like this. This is a kind of address or a pointer or cursor or whatever you say. Now as you have the cursor at the element 5, when you want to fetch from 6 to 10, you use this cursor in the next request so that your backend will understand that you have the elements till 5 and you want from 6 to 10. So that instead of discarding all the elements sequentially right from the beginning, you can directly skip to this part. And this is how the performance will be optimized compared to the limit offset pagination. So let's implement the cursor pagination. Let's get back to the code and instead of limit offset pagination, let us use the cursor pagination. And in the cursor pagination, we have to pass the page size and the ordering. In my case, I want to put the ordering as price so that my paginated response will be ordered by the price. So let me get back to the Postman and I won't be putting any query parameters because I need a cursor. In order to get the cursor, first I will fetch the first 5 elements. Now as you can see that as the page size is equal to 2, I got only the first 2 elements and it is also sorted by the price. Now if I need the results from the next page, I have to use the cursor. As you can see that I got a cursor. When I use this cursor, the first 2 elements will not be discarded. Instead, it starts reading from the cursor as we already got the cursor. Now I will send the request. Now I got the next 2 elements. So here what's happening is, first I got the first 2 elements. Then when I want 3 and 4, I'm not discarding or skipping first 2 elements. I got the cursor from the second element. I stored it in the front end and again I sent it back using the query parameters. As you can see here, there is a query parameter here. And using this query parameter, I'm telling to the backend that, hey, I have first 2 elements I need from 3 and 4. So instead of skipping 1 and 2, it starts reading from 3 till the page size. Currently, as I mentioned, the page size is equal to 2. It starts reading from 3 till 4. Here we are not skipping any elements. Without skipping any elements, we are able to read the 3 and 4 directly. And that's how the cursor pagination is optimized. But there is a disadvantage here. As we have mentioned the page size is equal to 2 in the code, let us mention the same page size here. And we have mentioned the price as ordering. Now let us discuss the disadvantage of the, let's say you want the elements with the index as 7 and 8. In this case, you cannot directly request the 7 and 8 because you don't have the cursor for 6. If you have cursor for 6, then you can send that cursor to the backend so that it will fetch 7 and 8. But you don't have the cursor for 6. In order to get the cursor for 6, you have to request for 5 and 6. But in order to request for 5 and 6, you need the cursor for 4. So in order to get the cursor for 4, you need to request the 3 and 4. But in order to request the elements with index 3 and 4, you need the cursor for 2. And this cursor you will be having because this is the entry point. So in order to get the 7 and 8, first you need 1 and 2. You cannot directly skip to 7 and 8. That's the drawback of the cursor pagination. But the beauty of the cursor pagination is once you have traveled to this much point till the 6. In order to get the 7 and 8, you don't have to skip all the elements right from the beginning to the 6. You can directly get the 7 and 8 because you already have the cursor of 6. So there is an advantage and there is a disadvantage as well. If you take the live example, if you see the Instagram Reels or YouTube Reels, there the cursor pagination is used. That means the user cannot skip to 10th element directly. When you are scrolling, first you will get the first 2 elements. When you scroll more, then you get 3, 4. When you scroll more, then you get 5, 6. When you scroll more, then you get 7, 8. So this is more suitable for reel kind of things or Instagram posts or LinkedIn post where the user don't have the flexibility to move to a certain range. And this can handle a big loads of data as well. And this is the scalable solution. That's about the cursor pagination. See you in the upcoming videos. Thank you. Hi. In this session, we are going to develop a backend REST API for the URL shortener application. So the URL shortener is nothing but it shortens the long URLs. Let's say I want to shorten the google.com, so I will be entering the google.com here, and then I will click on the shorten URL and it will shorten this URL. So this is the shorten URL, and when I click on this, it will get redirected to google.com. So let me click on this. Now it's getting redirected to google.com. Currently, I'm using some free online application for shortening this, but let's develop the same logic using the Django REST framework. So let's get started by creating the project on the desktop. So I will be going to the desktop and then I will open the terminal, and here I will be creating the project Django admin start project, and let the project name be URL shortener. I will be opening this using the VS Code. So I will just click on open in terminal and just I will type code dot, and this will open my project in the VS Code. And now in the URL shortener, I have the urls.py and also the settings.py. As I am using the REST framework, I will be putting the REST framework inside the installed apps list. So here REST framework. And also I have to create the app inside this project. So I will be opening the terminal and here python manage.py start app and let the project name be URL shortener app. And inside this application there is no urls.py, so we are supposed to create one urls.py, and I want to link this urls.py with the main urls.py which is in the project directory. So here path, and I want to include the shortener app URLs short URL shortener.urls, and I have to register this application in the settings.py. So here I have registered the app. I would like to put this at the beginning, and now I have to import this function include, and in the urls.py I will be copying the same and I will be pasting it into the app level urls.py, and here I will be deleting the unnecessary code here, and I will be creating a path to shorten the URL. So let's say the endpoint is create, and here I will be declaring a function create short URL, and now I have to declare this function in the views.py. So in the views.py I will declare a function where it accepts a request, and then let's write the logic later. For now I'm putting the pass here from dot views import create short URL, and now in the views.py in the create short URL I have to put some decorator where it should accept the post request. So at the rate of API view it should accept only the post request. So I have to import the decorator API view from the REST framework. So from REST framework dot decorators import the API view. Now this will accept the post request and I want to test the post request. So return response request dot data, and I have to import the response from the REST framework, and let us test this endpoint if we are receiving the response or not. Now I will be opening the postman. Before opening the postman I will just run the server python manage.py run server, and there is some issue here, some recursion is happening here. So I'll just go back, and we have to mention the app name here, but we mention the project name here. That's why the recursion is happening. URL shortener app.urls. So let's run the server again. Now this is running with the port 8000. So I will be opening the Postman now, and I will use the post request. Because we declare the post in the decorator, that means it accepts the post request tool and we need to invoke the localhost with the port 8000, and we declare the endpoint as create, and in the body I'll just put some raw body with the JSON format. Here message API working. Now I'll send the request. Yes, I'm receiving the same response because here I am returning the same response here. So let us use this function to create the shortened URLs. So here long URL, we need to get the long URL from the request. So request.data long URL, and we have to convert this long URL into short URL, and then we have to throw the response back. So in this case, we need to maintain the database that has the mapping between the long URL and short URL, so that if someone invokes with the short URL, that will be mapped to the long URL and that will be redirected. So let's get into the models.py and let's create the class URL model, and here models.model, which is a inheritance, and then we need to declare two things. One is long URL and one is short URL. Now this is the blueprint of the database table, and the table name is URL model. And let us import this URL model into the views.py. So from dot models import URL model. Whenever we get the long URL, we just save this into the database. So here URL model long URL is equal to long URL dot save, and before saving, let us put some variable here. URL model is equal to URL model, and we have to return response, and here we have to return the short URL. But before returning to the short URL, we have to generate the short URL using the URL model itself. Basically what we can do is we can create a short URL here with some logic. Create short URL where we pass the long URL, and we can put this here, and we can put the short URL equal to short URL, and then we can do URL model dot save, and we can return the short URL directly. But what I will do is I will remove the short URL here because I want to create this logic inside the URL model itself. So whenever we pass the long URL, the short URL will be automatically created by the URL model. So I have to edit the URL model. Whenever we save the model, then itself the short URL has to be generated. Def save, and here we have to declare the short URL is equal to some random string. Let us come to this point later. Now whenever we save using the long URL, the short URL will be automatically generated, and we can get the short URL from URL model dot short URL, and we can return the short URL as a response. We are getting some error here. Let's get into the settings.py, and here this is supposed to be the URL shortener app because we have to declare the apps here, not the project. Now I think the error is resolved. Let's get back, and here we need to change the logic for generating the short URL. Generate random string. I want the minimum length of the string to be 6. So min length is equal to 6. So here I will be getting the minimum length. And this is the logic for generating the random string with the minimum length is equal to some number. Here I have declared it as a 6. Now let us test this endpoint if this is actually saving it in the database or not. So let me go back and Here I will run the server. I think the server is already running. Now I will get into the Postman and I will just invoke the endpoint. And here I have to pass the long URL. Let's say https www.google.com, and here I will send the post request. Now I'm getting some error. No such table URL shortener app URL model. Let us solve this issue. It's because the migrations were not happened. Whenever we create a model, we should run some migrations. So python manage.py make migrations, and also python manage.py migrate. Now let's run the server again and let's get back to the Postman and resend the request. Now this is generating the short URL. I mean the base path of the short URL. Now let's get back and let us see if this is saving in the database or not. So here we need to download a plugin here, SQLite Viewer. Once this is installed, let's get back and let's open this using the SQLite Viewer. Here let's go to the URL model, and here you can see that only the long URL is being saved in the database but not the short URL. That means our save logic is not working properly. Let's go to the models.py, and here we need to save. I think I have to remove this here and I need to put the save here because save happens after declaring the short URL. My mistake, my bad. Now let's get back and let's test the Postman again, and let me send the request again. Now the short URL is generated. Now let us check if this is being saved in the database or not. Here in the db.sqlite3, yes, now the short URL is being saved. So we have done till creating the shorten URL, and now whenever someone enters into the shorten URL, that should be redirected to the long URL. That part we are going to solve it now. So here I will be creating one more endpoint, def redirect to long URL, and here also the API view, let it support the get and post, both of them, and whenever someone enters the short URL, they should be redirected to the long URL. So first we need to get the short URL from the URL. So here in the request, we also get the short URL and we see which has this short URL. So URL model is equal to URL model dot objects dot get short URL is equal to short URL. That means we are fetching a row that is having this short URL, and then we return, instead of response we redirect because user wants to see the redirect rather than the response. So we need to import this redirect function from Django.shortcuts import redirect, and this will be redirected to the long URL. And also we need to get the short URL. We will get the short URL right from the URL. So here path string short URL, and this will be redirected to the long URL. So here redirect. So here we have to import redirect long URL. Now let me get back and let me check if I'm getting really redirected or not. So in the Postman, I got this as a short URL. When I enter this short URL in my browser, I should be able to redirect to the google.com. So here I'll just open the browser and http localhost 8000, and I will be entering the short URL here. Yes, this got redirected to google.com. So we have successfully developed the URL shortening algorithm, and in the upcoming session we are going to optimize this. Currently whatever I have explained you is the very simple logic for generating the URL shortener, but this logic is not the solid one because we are just generating the random string. What if any collision happens? What if the random string matches between two invokes? In that case, there is a possibility of collision, and hence this is not recommendable approach, but I have explained you since this is the easiest possible approach. In the upcoming session, I will be little modifying this approach so that you will be able to well versed with the solid approaches. Thank you. Hi. In the previous session, we have developed the REST API to create these short URLs. In this session, we are going to solve some of the potential bugs. So here the first potential bug which I can see is if the short URL itself is a create, then there might be a collision between these two paths. Because once the short URL is a create, these two paths will become equal and this causes the collision. So in order to avoid this, we need to change the structure of either of the paths. So here in the path 1, I'm changing the structure of URL to something like this, API/create. Now we have resolved this issue, and the second potential bug which I can see is if we get into the logic inside the URL model to generate the short URL, we are generating the random string. If we follow this approach, it might generate two equal random string which itself causes a collision. So we need to make sure that the generate random string function always generating a unique string as a short URL. So in order to solve this, what we can do is inside the generate random string, we check if the random string is already there in the database. If yes, we will recreate another random string. If not, we will save it into the database. But if we follow this approach, let's assume that we have 1 million short URLs. Now, in order to add a new short URL, we need to check all the 1 million short URLs if it already exists or not, which is just an expensive. So in order to solve this, while generating itself, we should make sure that we are generating the unique rather than checking the uniqueness by checking all the previous short URLs. So in order to do this, we can make use of the ID because database always generate a unique ID, especially the Postgres. So here whenever we are saving the URL model, it's auto incrementing the ID and making sure that the ID is always unique because it's the auto incremented ID. If 1, 2, 3 is generated, those will not be generated again. Rather it will generate something like 4, 5, 6, etc. So as the ID is unique, we can make use of that ID and that itself can be a short URL. So here instead of generating the random string, we generate the short URL using the ID. So here I will remove this function and rather I will generate something like generate short URL from ID and we need self.id here. So here in order to get the self.id, first the long URL has to be saved into the database because without saving into the database we won't get the consistent ID. We may get the potential ID but not the actual ID because the real ID can be generated after saving into the database only. So here after saving I need to do this. So once we get the ID, then we can generate the string from this ID using the hashing. So as the ID is integer but I want the short URLs as a string, I can convert this into an equivalent string using the hashing. If you are not sure about the hashing, please check it in the internet. There are lots of sources which can explain various types of hashing. Here I will be using the simple hashing from hash IDs, import hash IDs, and here I will create a function generate short URL from ID, and here I will be passing the ID here, and oops, this is not the function, this is div, and here I will be returning the hashed ID, and I want the minimum length to be 6, so I will be mentioning the minimum length here. Min length is equal to 6, let it be 5 for now, and again I have to save it into the database because after generating the short URL I have to save it. And now let us test this with the Postman. I would like to test this with the google.com. So I will be invoking the localhost 8000 API create, and here inside the body I will be passing the long URL. Long URL will be the google.com https www.google.com, and here I will be getting the short URL. Let us test this. I will be entering this in the browser. So here localhost 8000, this should redirect to Google. Yes. So our current logic is working, which is more optimized and bug free. Thank you.